and now it was time for change again. But he wouldn't think of that yet. This was the third reunion, though Hugo had been forced to miss last year's. He hadn't seen any of these friends for 2 years then. The carriage drew to a halt at the foot of the steps leading up to the massive front doors of Penderys Hall and rocked for a few moments on its springs. Hugo wondered if any of the others had arrived yet. He felt like a child arriving for a party, he thought in some disgust, all eager anticipation and nervously fluttering stomach. The doors of the house opened, and the Duke himself stepped between them. He proceeded down the steps despite the rain, and reached the foot of them as the coachman opened the carriage door, and Hugo vaulted out without waiting for the steps to be put down. "George," he said. He was not the sort of man who normally hugged other people, or even touched them unnecessarily, but it might very well have been he who initiated the tight hug in which they were both soon enveloped. "Goodness me," the Duke said, loosening his hold after a few moments and taking a step back in order to look Hugo over. "You haven't shrunk in 2 years, Hugo, have you? In either height or breadth. You are one of the few people who can make me feel small. Come inside out of the rain, and I shall check my ribs to discover how many you have crushed." He was not the first to arrive, Hugo saw, as soon as they were inside the great hall. Flavian was there to greet him. Flavian Arnott, Viscount Ponsonby. And Rafe was there too, Rafe Stockwood, Earl of Berwick. "Hugo," Flavian said, raising a quizzing glass to his eye and affecting bored languor. "You big, ugly bear. It is surprisingly good to see you." "Flavian, you slight, beautiful boy," Hugo said, striding toward him, his boot heels ringing on the tiled floor. "It is good to see you, and I'm not even surprised about it." They wrapped their arms about each other and slapped each other's back. "Hugo," Rafe said, "it feels like just yesterday that we saw you last. You look the same as ever. Even your hair still looks like a freshly shorn sheep. And that scar across your face still makes you look like someone I wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley, Rafe," Hugo said as the two of them came together and hugged. "Are the others not here yet?" But even as he spoke, he could see over Rafe's shoulder that Imogen was coming downstairs. Imogen Hayes, Lady Berkeley. "Hugo," she said as she hurried toward him, both hands extended. "Oh, Hugo." She was tall and slender and graceful. Her dark blonde hair was dressed in a chignon at the back of her head, but the very severity of the style merely emphasized the perfect beauty of her rather long Nordic face, with its high cheekbones, wide, generous mouth, and large blue-green eyes. It also emphasized the almost marble impassivity of that face. That had not changed from 2 years ago. "Imogen." He squeezed her hands, and then drew her into a close embrace. He breathed in the familiar scent of her. He kissed one of her cheeks and looked down at her. She raised one hand and traced a line between his eyebrows with the tip of her forefinger. "You still frown," she said. "He still scowls," Rafe said. "Dash it! But we missed you last year, Hugo. Flavian had no one to call ugly. He tried it on me once, but I persuaded him not to repeat the experiment." "He had me mortally terrified, Hugo," Flavian said. "I wished you were here to hide behind. I hid behind Imogen instead." "To answer your earlier question, Hugo," the Duke said, clapping a hand on his shoulder, "you are the last to arrive, and we've been all impatience. Ben would have come down to greet you, but it would have taken him rather too long to get down the stairs, only to have to go up them again almost immediately. Vincent stayed in the drawing-room with him. Come on up. You can go to your room later." "I ordered the tea tray as soon as Vincent heard your carriage approaching," Imogen said. "But doubtless I will be the only one drinking from the pot. It is what I get for allying myself with a horde of barbarians." "Actually," Hugo said,